Hello, it's Mrs. Sandor. I'm one of the geometry teachers this year for this class. Today what we're going to be doing for our first online lesson is measuring and classifying angles. So you are going to want to open up your Google Classroom and get back into your Chapter 1 notes that we started the other day. Go ahead and head to slide number 7. And this is where we're going to pick up from when we were in class together. So at the bottom of page 7, you should see this page right here where you are measuring angles. This is going to be a review of what you've done in the past where we're just going to be measuring angles with a protractor. Now, normally we'd be doing this in class with a physical protractor, but because we have coronavirus, we are going to be doing this digitally. So the first thing we're going to do is go over how to measure angles with a protractor. So what you're going to want to do anytime you're measuring an angle, either with a physical protractor or with a digital protractor, is you want to line up one of your rays. And technically, this ray is called the bottom ray. Let me get a tool out here. This bottom ray right here. I highlighted it in red. That is called the initial side. So we want to line up that initial side of our angle with the 0 degree line. Now, because this angle does open up to the left, so it's going this way, we're going to use the 0 that's written in blue. If it was opening up the other direction, like opening up kind of clockwise, we would use the 0 on the other side of the protractor. So over here in our initial side would go along this bottom. You also want to make sure your vertex is right here in the center. Sometimes there's a little plus sign down there that you would line your vertex up on, or if you're using like a physical protractor, there might be a hole in that physical protractor where you would line your vertex up. So now we're going to read the angle measure. And if you notice on a protractor, there are two different sets of numbers. There's the set of numbers that is going in a clockwise direction along the outside of the protractor. Those are written in black. And then you also have the ones on the inside of the protractor, which are written in blue, and those go in a counterclockwise direction. So to determine which ones you want to use, think of your angle like an L. So if your angle is bigger than your L, you're going to want to use the bigger numbers. If your angle is smaller than an L, you would want to use the smaller numbers. You could also think of it like this. Now, because I wanted to line the ray up with the 0, if we look down at this part, we had a 0 and then we also had 180 degrees. I would want to use the numbers that are increasing from 0. So my 0, I would actually want to use these inside numbers because my angle's opening up to the left. I would start at 0 and I would work my way to the left. If I were having an angle on the right side, so my initial side would be down here, my vertex would be lined up, the 0 is actually written in black, and I would be working clockwise or to the right. So either way you can remember. But this particular angle that we have on our protractor, that terminal side ends up right here. I'm trying to circle those degree measures, those two right there. It looks like we have a 60 or a 120. So if we're using the L method, our angle is bigger than an L. So I would want to use the 120 degrees. Or since my initial side is here at the blue 0, I'm going to use the blue 120 degrees. Okay, so now let's do some practice. So if we go to the next page in our notes, let me see here if I can get. Here's page 2 where we're going to be measuring and classifying angles again. So on your notes, you should have a protractor off to either the left or the right. And what we're going to do is we're going to drag those protractors over to our angles and practice measuring. So bear with me here with the technology, but let's see if we can get this to work. Okay, so I'm going to click on this first protractor. I'm going to click on my protractor. And I'm going to drag it on over to my angle. So as you can see, my protractor is getting drug over to my angle, and I'm putting the dot of my protractor right on my vertex. So if your protractor has a little plus sign, you want to put your protractor plus sign right on the vertex of that angle. I also lined up my 0, my initial side down at the bottom. Now this angle is smaller than an L, so when I'm looking at my numbers here, I'm going to pick the smaller number, or because my angle is going to the left, my 0 is on the top, I'm going to be choosing the smaller values. Okay, so now I have to decide. Now it's not directly on 40, it's a little bit farther, so I'm going to say this is 41 degrees. And if you guys will click on the yellow text box in your notes, you would be able to type in a 41. Or 40, you've got to have that little bit of standard error. But that angle is 40 or 41 degrees. Okay, now let's do the second example. I'm going to drag my protractor over. Now, I don't believe in your notes you have 2 protractors, so you might need to grab your top protractor and drag that down to the bottom. So I have the middle of my protractor at my vertex. I have my initial side at 0. Now this angle is bigger than an L. So I would use the bigger number for my angle, or because I'm starting at 0, I'm working my way counterclockwise, I would use the bigger number again. I'd work my way to the left. Oops, wrong one. Okay, so here's where my angle is, right there. I'm going to be using the bigger number. So it's got to be in between 120 and 110. And it looks like we're about 100 and I would say 18 degrees. So on your notes, in your yellow text box right there, you would want to type in 118 degrees. Here, 118 degrees. Okay, and that's measuring your angles with a protractor. We have one more slide to go. That'll be coming up next. Okay, on to the bottom part of this page. This is the classifying part. So hopefully when you're seeing these 4 words, you're like, yes, I already know these. But just to make sure we've got the vocabulary down for classifying, an acute angle is an angle that measures more than 0, but it's got to be less than 90. So bigger than 0, smaller than 90. Obtuse has to be more than 90, but less than 180. Now, the next 2, your right angles and your straight angles, these are going to be exact measurements. So for a right angle, it has to be exactly 90 degrees, and you can always tell you have a right angle because of that little red right angle box. That tells you this is exactly 90 degrees. And then your straight angles would be angles that measure exactly 180 degrees or that create that line. That would be a straight angle. So now for your assignment, I would like for you guys to open up Google Classroom again. There is an assignment posted, your 1-4 measuring and classifying angles practice. And what you're going to be doing is there are images of angles with a protractor on them. So kind of like our first example that was in our notes where the angle was already on the protractor and we measured it. You'll be typing in your measurement. And then it's going to ask you for a classification. The classification is going to be one of these 4 words: acute, obtuse, right, or straight. If you have any questions, please contact your geometry teacher. And we will talk to you soon. Have a great day.